Step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. It's commitment. This is the step that separates the men from the boys. So declares a well-loved clergyman who happens to be one of AA's greatest friends, Ed Dowling, a Jesuit priest. He goes on to explain that any person capable of enough willingness and honesty to try repeatedly step 6 on all his faults without any reservations whatever has indeed come a long way spiritually and is therefore entitled to be called a man who is sincerely trying to grow in the image and likeness of his own Creator. Of course, the often disputed question of whether God can and will, under certain conditions, remove defects of character will be answered with a prompt affirmative by almost any AA member. To him, this proposition will be no theory at all. It will be just about the largest fact in his life. He will usually offer his proof in a statement like this: Sure, I was beaten, absolutely licked. My own willpower wouldn't work on alcohol. Change of scene, the best efforts of family, friends, doctors, and clergymen got no place with my alcoholism. I simply could not stop drinking, and no human being could seem to do the job for me. But when I became willing to clean house and then asked a higher power, God as I understand him, to give me release, my obsession to drink vanished. It was lifted right out of me. It doesn't say he did anything. It just said he became willing. So he became willing to do step 4 and 5. And he asked God to give him freedom from alcohol. Then it just vanished. Okay? It was taken from me when I was willing to work the steps. Without step 6 is dry drunk syndrome, mood swings, and, depression. In early AA, the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, listed alcoholism and addiction as personality disorders as a result of addictive personality traits. Today, it is understood these are brain-based conditions. So we know that the disease of alcoholism, our problem begins in our mind. I'm not arguing or debating whether it's genetic. We know that it is. In AA meetings all over the world, statements like these are heard daily. It is plain for everybody to see that each sober AA member has been granted a release from this very obstinate and potentially fatal obsession, stubborn and probably deadly addiction. So in a very complete and literal way, all AAs have become entirely ready to have God remove the mania for alcohol from their lives, the mental illness. And God has proceeded to do exactly that. Having been granted a perfect release from alcoholism, why then shouldn't we be able to achieve the same means, by the same means, a perfect release from every other difficulty or defect? This is a riddle of our existence, the full answer to which may be only in the mind of God. Nevertheless, at least a part of the answer to it is apparent to us. Be honest with ourselves and others. Love yourself, warts and all. When men and women pour so much alcohol into themselves that they destroy their lives, they commit a most unnatural act, defying their instinctive desire for self-preservation. They seem bent upon self-destruction. They work against their own deepest instinct. As they are humbled by the terrific beating. Come on. I don't want the light in my eyes. As they are humbled by the terrific beating administered by alcohol, the grace of God can enter them and expel their obsession. Yeah, humble. Here, their powerful instinct to live can cooperate fully with their Creator's desire to give them new life. For nature and God alike abhor suicide, crimes against nature. But most of our other difficulties don't fall under such a category at all. Every normal person wants, for example, to eat, to reproduce, to be somebody in the society of his fellows, and he wishes to be reasonably safe and secure as he tries to attain these things. Indeed, God made him that way. He did not design man to destroy himself by alcohol, but he did give man instincts to help him stay alive. That's the survival instinct. My note is the goal of step six is not to engage in self-condemnation or shaming. It's about looking at ourselves with honesty and accepting we have these defects. Showing ourselves acceptance and then submitting them to a higher power. It is nowhere evident, at least in this life, that our Creator expects us to fully eliminate our instinctual drives. So far as we know, it is nowhere on the record that God has completely removed from any human being all his natural drives. Since most of us are born with an abundance of natural desires, it isn't strange that we often let these far exceed their intended purposes. When they drive us blindly, or we willfully demand that they supply us with more satisfactions or pleasures than are possible or due us, that is the point at which we depart from the degree of perfection that God wishes for us here on earth. Okay? That's the measure of our character defects, or if you wish, our sins. So when I'm being controlled by one of my instincts, whatever it is, pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, sloth, or when I am demanding more than I am, that I can have, that's a way for me to measure myself, okay? If we ask, God will certainly forgive our derelictions, our neglectfulness. Maybe I forgot, or maybe instead of eating one candy bar, I wanted two. And then I said, oh, two was so good, let me have three. But in no case does he render us white as snow and keep us that way without our cooperation. That's something we are supposed to be willing to work toward ourselves. He asks only that we try as best we know how to make progress in the building of character. Character, mental or moral qualities distinctive to an individual. Yeah, God's not going to force me. Yeah, he's not going to force me to. Well, right now I'm working on cussing. He's not going to force me to be willing to work on cussing. That has to be what I have to be willing to do. That's my part. So, step six, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Is AA's way of stating the best possible attitude one can take in order to make a beginning on this lifetime job. You know, alcoholics aren't the only ones who have to work on these things. If you're trying to have a spiritual life and build character and be a good person, then you're trying to do these things too. You know, a lot of normal people know this stuff that's in the book that, we don't know. This does not mean that we expect all our character defects to be lifted out of us as the drive to drink was. Sorry, this was my third or fourth attempt to do this. A few of them may be, but with most of them we shall have to be content with patient improvement. The key words entirely ready underline the fact that we want to aim at the very best we know or can learn. When I'm aiming at perfection, it is, I can only see perfection as I see it with my limited understanding of what I know. And then what I know is going to change as I learn. But then I have a human mind, so what I can learn is only what I can learn. Because you can only go so far in your learning. So everyone's ideals are going to be different. But we keep learning and we keep growing because that's the human experience. It's not just an alcoholic experience. How many of us have this degree of readiness in an absolute sense? Practically nobody has it. The best we can do, with all the honesty we can summon, is to try to have it. Even then, the best of us will discover to our dismay that there's always a sticking point, a point at which we say, no, I can't give this up yet. And we shall often tread on even more dangerous ground when we cry, this I will never give up. Wow, that's kind of rebellious and stubborn, ain't it? Such is the power of our instincts to overreach themselves. Overreach is get the better of someone by cunning and cleverness. No matter how far we have progressed, desires will always be found which oppose the grace of God. Go against. Some who feel like they have done well may dispute this, so let's try to think it through a little further. Practically everybody wishes to be rid of his most glaring and destructive handicaps. Handicap is a circumstance that makes progress or success difficult. Be like something that makes life difficult. A condition that markedly restricts a person's ability to function physically, mentally, or socially. Something that's making my life difficult. I want to do whatever I want to do until I get to a point where now it's making things hard on me. Now I'm willing to change, and that's an alcoholic thinking. No one wants to be so proud he's scorned as a braggart, nor so greedy he's labeled as a thief. No one wants to be angry enough to murder, lustful enough to rape, gluttonous enough to ruin his health. No one wants to be agonized by the chronic pain of envy or be paralyzed by sloth. Of course, most human beings don't suffer these defects at these rock bottom levels. Pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, sloth, 7 deadly sins. A way to gauge ourselves and measure our defects. We who have escaped these extremes are apt to congratulate ourselves. Wow. I just caught that. Some of us have escaped the extremes of braggart, thief, murderer, rapist, glutton, envious, paralyzed by sloth. We who have escaped these extremes are apt to congratulate ourselves, yet can we? After all, hasn't it been self interest, pure and simple, that has enabled most of us to escape? Yeah, not much spiritual efforts involved in avoiding excesses, which will bring us punishment anyway. But when we face up to the less violent aspects of these very same defects, then where do we stand? What we must recognize now is that we exult in some of our defects. We really love them. He, for example, doesn't like to feel just a little superior to the next fellow, or even quite a lot superior. Pride. Isn't it true that we like to let greed masquerade as ambition? To think of liking lust seems impossible, but how many men and women speak of love with their lips and believe what they say so that they can hide lust in a dark corner of their minds? And even while staying within conventional bounds, many people have to admit that their imaginary sex excursions are apt to be all dressed up as dreams of romance. Self righteous anger can also be very enjoyable. In a perverse way, we can actually take satisfaction from the fact that many people annoy us, for it brings a comfortable sense of superiority. Gossip, barbed with our anger, a polite form of murder by character assassination, has its satisfactions for us too. Here we're not trying to help those we criticize, we're trying to proclaim our own righteousness. Look, I'm going to say this. A lot of these problems come from low self-esteem. You know what? I can see it in me. When gluttony is less than ruinous, we have a milder word for that too. We call it taking our comfort food. We live in a world riddled with envy to a greater or less degree. Everybody's infected with it. Keeping up with the Joneses, right? Do you have the latest car? Do you, are you are you wearing the latest style hairdo? Do you have the fashionable clothes? From this defect, we must surely get a warped and yet definite satisfaction. Else, why would we consume such great amounts of time wishing for what we have not, rather than working for it, or angrily looking for attributes we shall never have, instead of adjusting to the fact and accepting it? An attribute is a quality or feature regarded as a characteristic or inherent part of someone or something. It's not something you can take, it's part of a person's makeup. It is not on me, it is in me. So, yeah, angrily looking for attributes we shall never have instead of adjusting to the facts and accepting it. And how often we work hard with no better motive than to be secure and slothful later on. Only we call that retiring. Consider too our talents for procrastination, which is a really sloth in five syllables. Nearly anyone could submit a good list of such defects as these, and few of us would seriously think of giving them up, at least until they cause us excessive misery. It's human nature. I don't think it's just alcoholic nature. I think it's human nature not to want to give up something until it actually causes you a problem. Some people, of course, may conclude that they are indeed ready to have all such defects taken from them. But even these people, if they construct a list of still milder defects, will be obliged to admit that they prefer to hang on to some of them. So What are some of the mild defects? I don't know. I'm not going to go into it right now. Therefore, seems plain that few of us can quickly or easily become ready to aim at spiritual and moral perfection. We want to settle for only as much perfection as will get us by in life, according, of course, to our various and sundry ideas of what will get us by. So the difference between the boys and the men is the difference between striving for a self-determined objective, for the perfect objective, which is of God. So how am I going to know what is the perfect objective? Hmm. Hmm. Many will at once ask, how can we accept the entire implication of step 6? Why, that is perfection. Sounds like a hard question, but practically speaking, it isn't. Only step 1, where we made the 100% admission we were powerless over alcohol, can be practiced with absolute perfection. The remaining 11 steps state perfect ideals. They are goals toward which we look, and the measuring sticks by which we estimate our progress. Seen in this light, step 6 is still difficult, but not at all impossible. The only urgent thing is that we make a beginning and keep trying. Keep trying. If we don't quit, we can't. If you don't quit, you can't lose. If you don't give up, you can't lose. Just keep trying every day. It's a daily program. If we will gain any real advantage in the use of this step on problems other than alcohol, we shall need to make a brand new venture into open-mindedness. We shall need to raise our eyes toward perfection and be ready to walk in that direction. It will seldom matter how haltingly we walk. The only question will be, are we ready? Looking again at those defects we are still unwilling to give up, we ought to erase the hard and fast lines that we have drawn. Perhaps we shall be obliged in some cases still to say, this I cannot give up yet. But we should not say to ourselves, this I will never give up. Let's dispose of what appears to be a hazardous open end we have left. It is suggested that we ought to become entirely willing to aim toward perfection. We note that some delay, however, might be pardoned. That word, in the mind of a rationalizing alcoholic, could certainly be given a long-term meaning. He could say, how very easy. Sure, I'll head toward perfection, but I'm certainly not going to hurry any. Maybe I can postpone dealing with some of my problems indefinitely for an unspecified time. Of course, this won't do. Such a bluffing of oneself will have to go the way of many another pleasant rationalizations. A rationalization is an excuse. Attempt to just explain or justify one's own or another's behavior or attitude with logical, plausible reasons, even if these are not true or appropriate. At the very least, we shall have to come to grips with some of our worst defects and take action toward their removal as quickly as we can. We want to do this right away. The moment we say no, never, our minds close against the grace of God. Delay is dangerous and rebellion may be fatal. This is the exact point at which we abandon limited objections and move toward God's will for us. So, begin and continue, but never finish. Keep going, don't give up, never stop, never say surrender. It's God's will or death. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. For me, It is. It's an easy choice when you look at it in the right perspective. My way was and still is not a very happy way, but God's way is much better. So I did it under 30 minutes. God bless.